Hello and welcome to part 3 of my Dodge Dakota frame rust repair video series. In part 1 you saw me take apart the back of the truck. In part 2 you saw me cut out the rust and weld in patches on the back side of the frame. And today we're going to cut out this rust and we're going to weld in patches. I hope to get both frame rails done today. So if that interests you, stay tuned. We'll get started. I'm going to start on this side. There's a lot more access than on that side. That side's got the fuel line and the brake hose and whatnot that I'll have to move. So this side will be easier, I think, just because of the access. So we'll start there. My plan is to cut this out, cut it out with a cutoff wheel, round out the corners with the pneumatic reciprocating saw, and then cut the patch, weld it in place, and then move to the other side. So I'm going to grab that grinder. I'll get this cut out. So now that I've got that patch cut out, I'm going to use a flap disc and we're going to clean this up. My next step is going to be, I'm going to get the patch panel, I'm going to put it in place and clamp it down, and then I'm going to trace it with a paint pen so that I know the exact shape. And then I'll take it outside, I'll cut it out, bring it back in, and we'll weld it in place. I've got the patch cut to shape. It looks really good. I'm super happy with it. So now I'm going to grab the welder. We're going to weld this thing in. The outside is fully tacked. It's time to do the inside. I'm going to clean these welds up with a cup brush and then we'll do it again. The welding's done. Now I'm going to use a flap disc and grind these welds. Alright, so I got the patch welded in, and then I took a flap disc and I ground down the welds. After I ground that down, I got a little nervous that maybe this wasn't going to fit right. So I brought the back half of the frame in and I bolted it together along with the leaf spring perch. I wanted to make sure everything looks good, and everything looks good. It all fits together really nicely. The bolt holes are all where they should be. I'm really happy with it. So I've got this done. I'm actually going to separate the frame and then we'll start on the driver's side. It's getting kind of late, so let's save the driver's side for tomorrow. So for me, it's been a couple of weeks, but I bet for you, thanks to the magic of YouTube, it's only been a couple of seconds. So today, I'm going to separate this, take the back frame back outside, and we're going to repeat the process on the driver's side. First step, cut out the rust. This side was pretty badly buckled when the rust expanded, so I'm using a hammer and dolly to flatten things out. Step 2, we'll clean up the surface with a flat disc. This side has quite a bit of pitting, so I'm going to use the needle scaler and try and knock that out. So there's some rust pitting here that's pretty deep. I hit it with the flap disc, then I hit it with the needle scaler, and then I went after it with the wire brush. You know, I don't get the warm and fuzzy that I've got the rust out of there. So I've wiped it down now with phosphoric acid, and I'm going to leave this and let it sit for an hour or so while I go get some lunch. I'm hoping that will take care of any of the remaining rust that's in those pits that I can't get to. I'll come out, I'll wipe it down, we'll hit it with a cut brush again, and then we'll see how it looks. So now I have some water with baking soda in it to kind of help neutralize this acid. I'm not seeing any rust in these areas where I wiped down. I'm happy with how that looks, so it's time to cut out the patch. So I've got the patch cut and beveled and it's ready to weld in. So what I'm going to do now, I'll grab the welder and we'll weld this. Just like before, I'm going to tack it all the way around, just about every inch on the outside. Do the same thing on the inside. And then I'm going to weld the inside solid. And then I'll come back out and I'll weld the outside. So I've got the patch welded in. It's welded in both sides. It still needs to cool down. It's quite warm. But what I'm going to do now, I'm going to grab the flap disc. I'm going to flatten these welds out. I'm not trying to make them look pretty, just flatten them down so that when the two frames are bolted together, it's not the welds hitting. So it took a little while, but I got that all ground down with a flap disc. I think it's looking pretty good. I do still have one other thing to do on this side. I need to cut off the bracket that supports the e-brake cables and weld that on. So I'm going to cut this out with a cutoff wheel, clean up the back side, and then I'll clamp it on with some vice grips and we'll weld it. Alright guys, so I'm going to call this the end of part 3. In this one we managed to fix both the passenger and driver's side frame rails on the truck side. I'm really happy with how these two turned out. In all honesty, I think they look really good. I still have some work to do. I need to bore out the holes and then get everything painted. I'm going to save that for part 4. So I would like to tell you I had a lot of fun today, but I'm really tired and I was in a grumpy mood all day. I'm very happy to have this done. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to watch this. I hope you found something here useful, or at least maybe you enjoyed watching it. I do appreciate it, so thank you for watching.